Serious, teachers of Reddit. What is the surprisingly smartest thing your stupidest student has ever said? Just this past Tuesday, I had a student struggling with science homework, actually math skills. But for my science class, he was almost mute about what he needed. What he didn't understand. No matter how much I tried to guide him through unit conversions. The study period was ending and I had to let him go with little progress made. As he was packing up, he told me I'll try it again after art class. I'm usually smarter at this after I do some art. I thought that was an interesting observation. And I asked him why he thought that might be the case. He said, I'm pretty good at art. It's easier to try hard stuff while I still feel like I'm good at something. Because I want to keep feeling like that. That's the entire educational psychology argument for fostering a sense of competency and the support of intrinsic motivation. In the fewest words possible. I actually think he's one of my smartest students. Really. He just struggles to make it show on paper. Some of my 5th graders were playing with a basketball in the hallway. I told them to stop. They did for a second. Then continued. I said, guys, why do you keep bouncing that ball in the hallway? And one of them just looked at me and said, if you were 10 you'd do it too. Semicolon. I was like, yeah, I guess I would. Scout leader, doing first aid with some cubs. I had a band-aid on my elbow, one of the big ones, and my student was trying to work out what it was. It was a drunken fall. I said ninjas had got me. He said it sounded like a ninjury. I laughed out loud. While in reality it was a ginjury. This kid isn't dumb. But most of the things he says are. Just because he talks a lot and likes to argue. This kid goes to a private school which is open for 11 hours every day. Even though the school day runs for 7 hours. If parents need to drop their kids off early or pick them up late, they have that option. He told me that he really wanted to get a dog. But his parents won't do it because there would be no one home to take care of the dog most of the time. The rest of the conversation went like this. That makes sense. Puppies and dogs need lots of attention. It wouldn't be nice to leave them home alone all day. Kid. Well, we could bring it to doggy daycare me. Every day? If someone is taking care of your dog for 8 hours every day. Is that even your dog? Well, that's what they do with kids. So real and so sad. That moment has stayed with me for a few years now. When I was teaching subtracting across 0, 507-254 to 2nd graders, one kid said it's like when your mom needs milk and you go to your neighbor and no one is there, so you go to the next door. I was like, DFCK is subtracting across 0? Me. How do you know if something is alive? Them. If you can kill it. I don't know if this counts, but I was teaching a public speaking class. It was mostly 9th grade. They were all nervous about their first big speech. And I tried to ease their nerves by saying, I promise giving a speech won't kill you. Then, some kid shouted, do you know how many people in history have died while giving a speech? I was on lunch duty one day and a middle school boy jokingly said, MR. Original sanitizer. You wanna buy me an extra? I replied with, do I look like your daddy? He replied, straight-faced, I don't know. You might. I ain't never met him. I bought him an extra. Edit. An extra is something extra to the basic school lunch. Like an ice cream sandwich. I teach 1st grade, so many not as dramatic as other replies. I had a kid who is kind of never quite paying attentions. We read a dinosaur book and were answering very basic 1st grade questions in the back of the book. It literally had a brachiosaurus and said, the dinosaur's legs are A. long, B. short. He pretty much got stuck here and didn't move on. To me, it was the easiest question in the book, but some of the students are low-level English learners, so it is possible he just couldn't understand the words long or short. After like 7 minutes of doing my rounds and assisting other students, I came back to him. He had written in C. Long and short are both opinion words. Used to teach chess to elementary level kids. Would run chess camp over the summer. 20-40 kids come in every day for a full school day, but every period is basically a chess class. Lasts a week. On the first day, I would tell kids they need to lose to get better. Which is true in a game like chess, especially in the beginning. I would tell them you have to lose 50 games before you can improve in chess. Well, on about day 3 I'm walking from the field to the class and see one of my students, second grader, walking the other direction and ask him offhand, how's chess going? And he responds, well, I've lost all of my games so I guess I'm doing great. I'm teaching English as a foreign language and one of my students hasn't been attending for a year. When he finally came, I gave him an essay to write. He wrote it in perfect German because he thought that we were studying German. The guy had been learning German all year long only to learn that we were studying English. This is both the smartest and the stupidest thing I can imagine. If you were an inch taller you'd be round. You just can't punish wordplay like that. When learning mythology. Mister, if centaurs have 2 arms and 4 legs, does that make them insects? Studying gothic novels with my low ability, special needs group, and they were asked to say how they feel about horror films. My student came out with, I love horror films because they make me more aware of my surroundings. I was very impressed. I've mentioned this before. And also it is genuinely difficult to tell who is the stupidest. Kids are smart some days and clueless others. Some grow out of it. Anyway, we were talking about cheetahs being the fastest land mammal. Some inner city kid swells up and says he can beat a cheetah in a race. The class laughs. Kid doesn't let it go. Finally he just says I can beat a fat cheetah in a race. I'm just thinking, maybe? In a college music history class, we were discussing the differences in sound between a harpsichord from the High Baroque and today's grand piano. One student, who normally contributed little, said, the reason the 2 instruments sound so different is because harpsichord strings are plucked by quills, whereas piano strings are struck by hammers, and make different sounds. 2. If plucked or struck. I don't wanna be dumb like my mama. Teacher at an inner city school for a time where almost all the students had free breakfast and lunch, written about it before. Lots of the kids realized and knew they were in a no-win situation and a downward spiral in terms of education and situation in life. Quite a number of them tried their damnedest though to get out of it. Lots of times the kids don't know what is awaiting them at home. Many parents don't read to their kids or help them with homework. Many just can't because they themselves barely have an education. Or they are in just bad situations. One student came in and said their mama chose to pay the cable TV bill over the hot water bill. Another week their mom shot themselves in the hand with a gun she borrowed from some guy. Later the same mom chose to pay her cell phone bill over electricity. And that student had enough and decided to start studying and try to climb out. There is hope. I have a student in my class with autism. He is very high functioning but he is a couple years behind his grade level. We were discussing the American Revolution and one of the vocab words we had was tyrannical leader. I jokingly told the class that if I was ever the leader of the country that's the kind of leader I would be, and I went on to say that all of your teachers would be that way too. Most of the class looked at me blankly but this one kid with autism understood what I was saying and looked at me and while trying to contain his laughter says, well, that's because all teachers have a superiority complex. I just couldn't help but laugh in front of the class for the next 5 minutes. I remember circumference because it sounds like circumcised. I don't understand what's going on in class because you explain things so only the smart kids understand. He was absolutely right. I wasn't meeting my students on their level and building them up. I was immediately expecting them to be on my level. And that just wasn't realistic. 5 years ago, as a brand new teacher, this was an important thing for me to hear. It completely changed the way I planned lessons. And I'm a much better teacher now because of what he said. I still think back on that moment. Sometimes the students impact our lives just as much as we impact theirs. And teach us important lessons. Edit. My first ever silver. Thanks so much. Edit number 2. Holy moly. Platinum? Thank you. English as a second language teacher here. I specifically work with new to country students who have only just arrived in the US. One day a few years ago, I was trying to explain to my class why we were practicing a tornado drill. Many had never heard of a tornado, so I found a quick YouTube clip to show what they are. After we finished, one girl was visibly freaked out but very clearly wanted to be prepared for this monstrosity. So she took out her planner and asked me what days the tornado comes to the city. I tried to be consoling but inside I was laughing so hard. 5th grader. Get negative for a volume answer. Me. Negative volume? Think about that for a minute. 5th grader. Couldn't that be for a black hole? He's incorrect OFC. But based on what he knows, that is some real lateral thinking. In that position, I wouldn't really know what to do. Can't say he's right. But I want to get the point across that he was really clever. I've been teaching for 10 years either to kids about to be kicked out of the system or at a school with mostly kids with low socioeconomic status and are learning English as a second language. Honestly, I don't even know how to gauge intelligence anymore. I've had AP kids in my class that can't figure out tea unless it's spoon-fed to them. I've had severely handicapped kids that are doing the best work in my class. I had a kid that has so low that I had to repeat the previous day's lesson to him every day and we never got very far. But he could ride his bike the 15 blocks home and navigate 3 different gang territories without incident. I've had kids that were headed to prestigious universities that couldn't figure out how to make a box of mac and cheese if they had to. I told him, "Sorry kiddo. I know. The struggle is real." Without missing a beat he replied, "Yeah miss. But we in it." I realize I have better chances going to a trade school. College is overpriced. Even for the academically inclined. I wouldn't use the word stupid to describe this student. But I had this girl 1 year as a student teacher and then a 2nd year when I landed my first teaching job. She was autistic and struggled to get her work done and make friends. She was also bilingual. One day during class she started interpreting a video in real time. It was amazing. Interpretation like that is extremely difficult. But she was able to do it like it was nothing. Sadly, she passed away the next year. But she will always have a special place in my heart. I had a student in 9th grade biology named Manny. He wasn't the stupidest kid I ever had. But he certainly wasn't a Rhodes Scholar. I told my kids if they would get through mitosis and meiosis, I would answer any questions they had about the mechanics of reproduction. One girl asked about birth control, whether you take it only when you have sex or if you have to take it every day. I answered. And Manny, who had never heard of birth control, said, "Wait miss. Wait. You're telling me there's a pill girls take and they don't get pregnant? Why are all these girls pregnant? You said for something to be living it has to be able to reproduce." The dude got his penis cut off. He's dead. I don't care about brainwaves. He's dead. Also, protein. At least a listen. Freshman in biology. I'm not going to fight him. I'm an adult now and adults don't use their hands to hurt people. They use their words. I don't even know exactly what the topic of discussion was. But I think we were defining some basic terms, ideas related to social ethics. My field is in the humanities. One mediocre student asked how we will know when we've arrived at the right definition if we have no knowledge of it beforehand. Said student didn't realize he had inadvertently stumbled upon an epistemological conundrum that has troubled philosophers going all the way back to Plato. If not further, it would be like asking someone to go out and find me a dinglehopper. Well, if you have no idea what a dinglehopper is, then you can't very well know when you've got it. Kid was answering a question and used the word vernacular. Everyone just stopped and looked at him and he was like, "Yeah. That's right. I know words." This was grade 9. I teach life skills to kids. I have to give a pre and post test to the kids every year. I personally think it's extremely poorly written. And kids usually struggle because it was obviously made by someone who doesn't work with kids. I help them through it as much as possible without giving the answers it's all true false. A lot of the questions use logical fallacies such as saying most people my age. Which again is too high a level. One 4th grade kid, who is very smart and a little impulsive, raised his hand and said miss. Isn't that a matter of opinion? When I was teaching 2nd grade, I had a mug that said I teach muggles because Hogwarts wasn't hiring. A boy noticed the HP font and asked what it meant. I translated for him and he went, "But you don't even know if we are muggles or not. We might get a letter at 11 years old." I was quite impressed with that quick thinking. Why can we eat some plants and not others? Full stop. Yeah. Nature, you bastard. All plants are edible sonts. There was this dumbass kid in my biological themes and film class who would always try to crack jokes and didn't get any of the deeper themes of the movies we watched. However, when I showed them Lorenzo's Oil and I remarked how the parents were just trying to make sure the child was as comfortable as possible before he died, said student replied, "Isn't that how everyone lives?" Full stop. I had to take a second to think about how strangely deep that was coming from this class clown. He then went on to state he didn't actually know the occupation of the father in the movie, so it kinda ruined the moment, but that stuck with me. One day a pretty bad kid was actually putting forth some effort in math, so I thought. He raised his hand because he was stuck, so I helped him in the same manner I help all my students, guiding them towards the answer while not giving the answer. After I helped him, a few minutes passed and he was really excited and said, I got the answer." I said -17? And he said, "Yeah, now I got the answer." He proceeded to never let me live down the fact that he finessed me out of that answer for the rest of the year. I had a set of twins in my class one time. I knew them from around school, but I didn't know there were 2 of them. I just thought there was one who was really fast or whatever. So on the first day I'm calling roll, and I see 2 similar names with the same last name, and call the first one. Girl says she's here. I ask if there are 2 of her. No. There's one of me. But I do have a twin. Also another time a student said, "It's easy to sound the smartest when you're the only one talking." Not sure why that one stuck with me. Edit. So apparently this confused some people. X and Y are specific to where I live and work. I don't want y'all to just look that up. Pop by and say hello. They are not array indexes. I used square breaks to indicate where I've changed the quote. Now change to and. Edit to. If you want to have more comprehensive comments, see below. My inbox is blowing up over this and I did not intend to put in as much effort as I have. Computer science. X equals a notable local event that involves walking to every bar between 2 popular points that day of the year. Y equals one bar in particular which has 2 or 3 companies inside of it, a mall of bartenders if you will. To another student. Dude. Arrays aren't that complicated. It's like X, except every bar is Y, with infinite bars inside. You can't know if their food sucks this year until you're already inside looking at it. You don't have to eat it, but you have to look at it. Private music teacher, 6 years old student. Do you have a job? Me. Yeah dude. I teach music lessons. Student. But I thought jobs were supposed to make money. Me. Dot. Touche. This girl was not my stupidest student. But she certainly wasn't as smart as she thought she was. One day I was talking about life in the 1950s. And she tells me that her mum was around in the 1950s. This was 2011 and I know her mum. And I know that mum is not even close to being in her 60s. I ask her, "Child, do you know how long ago the 1950s were?" "Yeah. When there were still black and white people." I still can't work out if this statement was incredibly naïve or incredibly insightful. But I've never forgotten it. If Roman Catholics aren't allowed to use IVF because men aren't allowed to masturbate, can they use IVF if the wife gets the sperm out? But if we have a gun buyback, only good people would do it. Criminals won't go for that. Because they make more money robbing people and stuff than they could make selling their gun. I hadn't even thought of that. It's like a blacksmith selling his hammer. I'm teaching in an elementary school. We were talking about what's typical for boys and girls and about whether these stereotypes are really true. A boy who was interrupting class the whole year and didn't take much interest in class raised his hand and said, "But isn't this totally stupid? Isn't it most important that you're happy? It doesn't matter if boys wear dresses. If they like it, they can wear whatever they want." I was really proud of him.